Vox.com is a left-wing website. And a guy named Zach Beecham, who one time wrote that there was a mysterious bridge connecting Gaza and the West Bank. There's not, by the way. He's just an idiot. This guy wrote an explainer today on why conservatives are championing Daniel Penny, but not Luigi Mangione. What's the difference between the two? And he really obfuscates the difference. He tries to bring in conservative social thought and Russell Kirk and just really spends a whole lot of words not really explaining anything, but essentially justifying to progressives that somehow they're the superior being. And this is a lot of what goes on with left-wing commentary these days, is a justification for people on the left. I want to play you some audio. It
doesn't make you as much money.
And it doesn't. Let me set this up for you. This is a conversation on MSNBC about the future of the party. And you got to listen to part of this.
It doesn't make you as much money.
And it doesn't. And listen, I've been a consultant. I was a consultant on the Harris campaign.
Yeah.
But you know what? I care about my community first and foremost, and the strategies that will reach them. And those strategies are scrappy. They're new. They're different than the old guard. But listen, this isn't the 1990s. We can't continue to run those campaigns. And also, Joe Biden won because of some of that scrappiness, right? In a pandemic, and we had to defeat Donald Trump. And so, it's also disappointing with the DNC. Like, the people that are running to lead the DNC are all white men.
And the thing is, I think about what the voter who was ride or die for Kamala Harris looked like. It looked like the people at this table.
Like us.
It looked like AOC. Latinas voted with her. It was Latino men. But so the reality is you're not bringing to the table the people who showed you how to win because they voted for her. They were willing to ride with her. You're chasing Republican voters who, no matter what Trump does, are going to vote for Trump.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter what he does.
Listen, the party should be led, to your point, by young women of color. Right?
Come on.
Because young
You wanna
women
win?
of color are the reasons that Democrats do actually have some of these wins. And we know how to communicate in ways that reach that more moderate voter, but also that progressive voter, because we...
Really? Kamala Harris, not exactly a great communicator. And here's the problem with these sorts of psychoanalysis by progressives. When you listen to progressives, one of the things, there's a difference between... And I got to be real careful here because not everyone who's on the right is a conservative. Conservatism comes with a level of humility because we don't have all the answers. We don't have all the answers. Are you a superlapsarian or an infralapsarian? I'm a superlapsarian. I bet you have no idea what that means unless you've been to seminary. Infralapsarian and superlapsarian. Did God set about the whole plan of redemption before or after Adam and Eve encountered the fruit in the garden? Did he put the whole plan in place before creation, before the first day of creation? Or did he do it after the fall? He did it before everything. Before he created everything, he knew exactly what was going to happen, how it was going to play out, designed it that way, and I have no idea why. But whether you're an infralapsarian or superlapsarian, there's a difference between the two, but also there's a humility that comes with you're never really sure, and you don't really know the answer. Why on God's good earth did he set this whole thing up? I have no idea. So there's a level of humility there, and that level of humility comes not just from faith, but also if you're a conservative, here's the thing. This goes to the Dunning-Kruger effect. We are all conservative about that which we know best. Every single person, however progressive you are, is conservative about that which you know best. And part of conservatism comes with a level of humility, and part of being an expert comes with a level of doubt. The people most convinced of something tend to be the people with the least bit of knowledge about that thing. The people who are most convinced, for example, and I'm going to step on some of your toes right here, the people most convinced the 2020 election was stolen are the people least expert in election law. The people most convinced the drones in New Jersey are UFOs are the people least knowledgeable about drones. The people most convinced that fluoride in American public drinking water causes brain damage are the people least knowledgeable about fluoride in drinking water. The people who are the most knowledgeable are willing to be challenged and willing to doubt and willing to explain and willing to engage. And progressives have no sense of humility. So they tend to be the dumbest people in the room who think they're the smartest. Progressives tend to think they need not know history because history is always new for them. One of the things Jonah Goldberg wrote in his great book, Liberal Fascism, is that progressives never need a sense of history because they always think they're on the right side of history and they have no need to learn from the past. They view the past as old, outmoded, racist, whatever. I personally think there's a lot to learn from the past. I try to pay attention to the past. I try to exercise some level of humility. And that gets into our education system. Take new math. So my producer is sending his kids to a classical Christian school that has embraced Singapore math. Singapore math, just so you understand, is Common Core. They've just changed the name. This is one of the things Common Core advocates do. And a lot of people and a lot of trend lines have decided, hey, we should rethink math. Math is no longer math. Math can no longer be the tried and the true method you and I used. It's got to be something new. It's got to be something shiny. They got to use blocks and models and draw it out and rethink it. They've changed math. And what you find in American educational systems is every 20 or 30 years, you have some new trend line that comes around and just screws everything up. Remember, for a long time, kids were taught to read and write by phonics, and it worked. And then they're like, oh, no, now we need the whole word method, and literacy declined. And guess what? They're moving back to phonics now. Eventually, they'll scrap the Singapore method, and they'll go back to real math. In education, they lack humility, and they always want the new and shiny. And part of that new and shiny is outmoded values in this country. Progressives don't like traditional values. And they've convinced themselves, well, those aren't traditional values. They are white man's values. And suddenly what we're generating are a bunch of monsters, ill-behaved monsters with no ethical core. So at Vox, the progressives are trying to explain to progressives how morally superior they are by why conservatives are distinguishing between Daniel Penny and Luigi Mangione. And by the way, it's progressives who see the opposite. Here's how I see Daniel Penny versus Luigi Mangione. Daniel Penny stopped a man from attacking other people, held him down, and the guy was still alive when he left Daniel Penny's care. And even if he wasn't alive when he left Daniel Penny's care, he was a threat to other people, and Daniel Penny was keeping people safe and then found not guilty by a jury of his peers. Luigi Mangione was not hurt by Brian Thompson. Brian Thompson was not a threat to him or his family, but he decided to become judge, jury, and executioner all in one. There is a bright and stark difference between the two. And yet we have a bunch of progressive kids in this country who can't distinguish between them, or to the extent they do, they think the man protecting people was the bad guy, and the guy taking justice into his own hands is the good guy. We're breeding an army of murderers in this country, in our public school system, in our elite institutions. This kid was an Ivy League grad who decided he could be judge, jury, and executioner in defiance of the whole of the American system, and the left is very happy with him and very upset that a jury of his peers let Daniel Penny off for daring to protect people on a subway system. And they can't understand conservatives and think, oh, we must be racist. The one guy was white and his victim was black, and the other were two white dudes, and that's why you're upset the white dude died and the black dude died. No, that's not it at all. But God forbid you have to understand morality. God forbid you have to understand law and order. And God forbid you have to understand real justice. People on the left are so arrogant and also so dumb. And they have taken over our cultural institutions and our academic institutions, and they wish to make your children dumber and more amoral or immoral. There are great public schools in this country. Don't get me wrong. There actually are really good public schools in this country. I have a number of relatives who are public school teachers, and they do a very good job. They are grounded in their faith, and they avoid all the woke nonsense. But even they can't deny that a bunch of woke progressives have invaded the academy, the elementary, secondary, and collegiate level to indoctrinate kids, not to teach them, educate them, and put them out into the world to become those with jobs and job creators, but to indoctrinate them into the values of the left. And the result is that 40% of kids, not kids, adults, 18 to 29, 40% of them thought it was perfectly fine for Luigi Mangione to gun down a healthcare CEO. It's not okay. And I suspect that most of that 40% are either a bunch of privileged, wealthy kids, or a bunch of kids indoctrinated by a bunch of progressives in government-run schools. Find yourselves a good classical Christian school or homeschool your kids if you can, and not everyone can. And if you can't, you got to be extra vigilant in your public school because of what some nut might be teaching your kid. It's sad, but it's the reality. You got to ground your kids in faith, not in whatever the progressives want your kid to believe.